When we grow up in scarcity, learning about money means more than learning about how to budget. Budgeting as a skill and as a tool on its own won't help us break free. My name is Joanna Daniel, and this is the Stories That Shape Us podcast with Joanna Daniel, where I'm going to look at the impact of financial trauma, growing up in scarcity, childhood trauma, and how that have a direct correlation with our money and the things that we can do to break free. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, we've taken some people through a faith and finance challenge where we were learning how to rewrite our money story. And I was amazed by the research that shows the connection between childhood trauma and finances, how it affects our self-worth and our self-esteem. And what we did in the challenge was really dive deep into how scarcity and how trauma form core beliefs that connects with our spending and how that was reflected in our bank statement. It was challenging for many people, but it was an amazing challenge because many people break free. And one of the areas of shame, one of the areas where really impact us is shame, through shame. So today I'm looking at how do we break free from shame when we've grown up in scarcity, when we've not had a lot, when we've experienced trauma, and we're seeing it reflecting on our bank statements. You know, when I hear people say we're living paycheck to paycheck and how to break free from paycheck to paycheck, I know many people who want to, but they don't just know how. And I think this is the piece that might be holding many people back. So financial shame is guilt or shame related to money. Shame around money can be triggered by having too much or having too little. However, in this series of the podcast this week around Mental Health Awareness Week, we're looking at the shame that is connected to not having enough, where we feel not good enough, where it manifests itself in so many different ways in our lives in adulthood. And one of the things that we can do to break free from that. Before I go any further, I want to describe what Brene Brown talks about shame, her definition of shame versus guilt, and which one is more useful to us when we're looking after our mental health and how it connects to our money. So guilt, she says, is adaptive and helpful. It's holding something we've done or failed to do up against our values and our feeling psychological discomfort. So guilt is holding something up against our values. And shame, on the other hand, it's an intensely feeling or experience, a painful feeling or experience of believing that we're flawed or we're unworthy of love and belonging. So you can imagine both are giving us completely different feelings. And something we've experienced or done or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. So if we're attaching shame to finances and our mental health, when we feel shame, we feel not good enough. We feel shame, we feel like we don't fit into certain places. Many of us grew up feeling like we didn't fit in. Those people are better than us. We were othered. And so we grew up othering ourselves through our behaviors. And we might think that we're doing the complete opposite. But if we look at how we look at money, how we view wealth, whether or not we feel we can create wealth, whether or not we feel we can break out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, and how do we break free and set ourselves free and set the next generation free. So let's look a little bit more on shame and how it shows up. The silence, it's sometimes not opening bills, not opening our mail, avoiding our bank statements or our banking apps. We don't know how much we get in, we don't know how much is going out, or not asking for help. One of the things that people who experience childhood trauma does is support. We struggle to accept support. And if you see this in yourself and you think, I need some financial advice, but I'm ashamed to go get it, because there's this core belief that tells you that you should have known better, you can do better, and you're not going to ask for support. And we want to, over the course of this week, help you to unpack and to reframe those core beliefs so that you can get the help that you need that is going to change your life. So some of the messages that we get in childhood when we grow up in scarcity that might be influencing these thoughts are messages of, we can't afford that. And as adults, we tell ourselves that our parents were doing the best they can. We couldn't afford it. They did their best. They worked really hard. But it's the value system that it helps that child to develop. Now, it doesn't mean that we're always going to have it. But as we're going to discover this week, it's what we do with the information. How do we communicate that to our children? That's going to make the difference. Or For those of us who grew up in religious settings where money is seen as evil, and we know that that's not what the Bible says. So there's research around adverse childhood experiences and the formation and development of negative core beliefs and how that might impact behavior and your money. So here are some ways that it shows up. Emotional spending, which leads to the accumulation of debt, shame, and regret. You know, if you think about the last time you bought something because you were not feeling a certain way, if you felt a shame or guilt or sadness or depression or anxious, and you bought something because you felt that was going to make you feel better. If you look at your bank statement, how many things did you buy in the last week because you didn't feel okay, you know? Or impatience. Lots of times when we experience childhood trauma, we instant gratification. We want something and we want it now. And that results in sometimes missed opportunities to buy wealth, because sometimes we're not going to do the long journey of buying stocks that might take a while. We won't do compound interest, for example. We won't make things accumulate because we want the thing right now. And so that instant gratification and the impatience make us do things that learning, it takes away the ability for us to learn and to settle in and to understand. And that's the direct connection to scarcity. And then when we look at limiting beliefs, when we have limiting beliefs, we'll self-sabotage ourselves. We will not earn. We will go into jobs that don't pay us enough. We will stay in a cycle of under-earning. For those of us who run businesses, we won't send off invoices. We won't price our products in a way that is going to be honoring of us. And when we're trapped in those cycles and those difficult feelings, they have really impacts our mental health. So we want to look at we want to be aware of how they show up and the things that we can do to change. So this is how financial shame might show up. It might show up through avoiding budgeting or financial planning, or asking for help, as I said earlier. It might manifest in staying in a cycle of debt or overspending to validate you, or to help you fit into a certain group, or to self-soothe feelings of depression or anxiousness or sadness or shame. And it shows up in comparison, where we compare ourselves to others on social media, or others in our social circle, others in our church, where we feel like if somebody has something that we should have it too. So that comparison, that is very damaging. And we struggle in our marriage. The research shows that 41% of divorce is as a result of finances. And so there's this big thing that is causing issues that we're not talking about as much as we should. So what are some of the things that we can do to heal? Name it. Shame thrives in silence. But when you start to speak your shame, and there are other people that can understand it, find a community where people can understand it, then shame dies in safe spaces. So name it, reframe it, learn how to reframe your negative core beliefs. For example, a negative core belief might be, I'm bad with money. The reframing of that can be, I'm learning how to steward my money well. I am learning financial education, and I'm learning how to make changes. And that feels very different than the very black and white, I'm bad with money. Invite God into the money conversation. Invite him in. He says if we lack wisdom, we can ask him, and he is going to teach us. He's going to tell us. So invite God into that money conversation and use the truth that is in his word to reframe and create a new identity that is in him. And then practice financial honesty. Small steps, looking at your bank statement regularly, talking to a mentor, talking to a financial coach, talking to your therapist or your counselor about your money wounds and your trauma and how that is showing up. Psalms 34 verse 5 says, those who look to him, to God, will be radiant, and their faces will never be covered in shame. As we look to him for guidance around this area, as we're making decided steps in healing, we will begin to see the difference. I want to invite you to tackle this area if you've never done it before. If you've noticed that it's impacting your emotional health, if it's impacting your mental health, if the shame is weighing you down, it's really important to find a support system, find a place that you can talk about it, where you can get help to unpack unpack the mystery around money, not only through budgeting, but unpacking and understanding how the trauma that you've experienced, the things that you've experienced in your past, how that is impacting your money right now. If this video was beneficial to you, like the video so that others can see it, subscribe to our channel, and stay with us throughout this week as we're going to unpack the different ways our money impacts our mental health.